the story. No, they are a part of the story's concoction itself. When you go, let me just back up a minute. When you say to a policeman, and this is the fact, you just shot this guy. Don't say anything. You have 2 days before you have to make a statement. You don't have to make a statement at the scene of the crime. You don't have to be investigated at the time of the crime. You can talk to your lawyer. You can talk to your police representative, your union representative. You can concoct your story before it has to be told.
And talk about a strong union, the Fraternal Order of Police. They're union, right?
Yes.
And talk about one of the main barriers to actually getting citizen review boards in places. I know there was discussion of it, but then it ended in Harrisburg when they said, oh, the civilian or the Fraternal Order of Police would never have it, so, we're not even going to try.
Mm-hmm.
That union has weight. It's strong.
But it has weight because they all want to give it weight. They're all in this game together.
Well, that's what it
they're,
needs.
They're in this game together. If the city, look what happened. New York, I thought was a good example where he came in and he was opposed to the police union, and now it's like going into being president opposed to the deep state. Now all of a sudden, what the police do is what the police do. There's no mayor who goes and takes charge of the police. What mayor goes? L.A. Who? What mayor goes out there and takes charge of the police? The mayors who come in for 4 years are at the behest of those people who are the career deep staters, whether or not it's within your state, your local county, or your nation. They're not in charge. You see the outcomes of cooperation or non-cooperation with mayors. When you see a Wilson Good, or you see what was his name, John, I can't think of his name, the black mayor in Philadelphia, come into office, you see the police unions oppose them and oppose everything that they do. And then you see a Rendell come in and everything's okay. They got contracts and everything rolling again. They can mess you up. Like the deep state in the national arena can mess you up. But mayors don't run their police forces.
And also, many times the actors in these unions and in other, like even the Masons or in the American Legion or in the Veterans Associations, they're the same people.
Ku Klux Klan.
Exactly. They know the same people, and they share those positions of power. And there's so much interconnection of authority that you can easily, one person can represent 4 different sources of authority, and perhaps invisibly so.
Hey.
You don't even know where it's coming from.
When Errol Gardner got choked to death, look at what police officer got reprimanded. It wasn't the one who choked him to death. It wasn't the ones who were laying on him or leaning on him, put their knees on him, or struggling with him. It wasn't the ones who were on the scene watching it. It was a black policewoman who shows up at the scene and didn't take proper command. You understand?
Oh, I understand. All too well, I think.
Okay. And that's New York, New York is not a liberal city. New York is the most segregated city in this country, by the way.
I thought that was Minneapolis.
Try New York. I bet they're close, but I would give New York the edge. New York is, which way do you want to talk about it?
That's true. I mean, the boroughs are the boroughs are pretty sharp well, the neighborhoods, just even the neighborhoods are very sharp delineations.
Absolutely. And so is rich and poor.
And there's such a gap between the rich and poor.
Oh yeah.
I think even in places like San Francisco, the gap is great, but in New York City, you have multi-billionaire financiers living in the same city as homeless people and those making minimum wage. And that's quite the juxtaposition.
Oh, man.
You get out to East Brooklyn, where the municipal transit doesn't even go, compared to someone in Wall Street or in Greenwich Village.
Yeah.
How do you even compare?
Yeah. I wanted to mention her because I wanted to mention about what is justice in this country. When are we going to get to a point that we recognize justice for the sake of justice, regardless, man, woman, black, white, policeman, citizen, justice simply for the sake of justice.
Have heard the tagline that justice is blind, but that is not true.
How about this one? All lives matter. You know.
Yeah.
or
You're right.
Even black shadowy figures in the dark.
No. All lives matter. Not those, though.
Oh. I got it.
Yeah. Sorry.
I didn't understand.
Sorry. I said all lives matter.
Okay.
Not all lives matter.
Yeah, I got you.
All lives matter.
Yeah, it's like England and France and United States. I mean, ganging up on all these little countries around there and producing all these refugees that none of them can accept.
Yeah, our land is full. Our land is your land. Our land is my land.
Your land is my land, but my land.
My land is my land. My land's a bunch of corporate crooks. Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah, moving on. I got to. The New York Ballet, we should absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a statement by a dancer who indicates that the New York City Ballet is a breeding ground for sexual exploitation. And you can imagine who is being exploited. It's the ballerina. It's the woman. It's the female of the company. It's the underpaid female. We go to see the women dance, but they're paid $29,000 to start, and the men $31,000 to start. But we're not talking even that here. That the men go on to be choreographers, and the women go on to start one-room little ballet schools after they're finished. We're not even talking about that here. We're just talking about rank abuse. We're talking about the use of photographs, for example, being shared by the males as they goggle and Google at the ones that each of them happen to be doing at the time. Let me see who you got, and I'll show you who I got. And they play these little games.
Yeah.
Not only amongst the dancers, but amongst the donors. The donors join in on the fun. As a matter of fact, it was a donor who suggested that they tie up one of the ballerinas like a farm animal and just simply abuse her. And it's not, let's say, unknown. For example, there was an incident where the New York City Ballet male dancers had a party in Washington, D.C. and destroyed a couple of rooms in a hotel as they entertained underage females with drugs and alcohol and all the rest of it. And it is known and paid for and covered up. In other words, it's the corporate climate. It's the institutionalization of abuse.
Yeah.
It's not simply the exercise of abuse. It's institutionalized.
It's just written so deeply into the fabric that it just becomes a part of the functionality of a thing. And when you try to root it out, much like a tree's deep roots, you pull up half the ground everywhere because it's really just like an indoctrination. It's just accepted as par for the course. And these are actual people.
These are actual people.
They're not just they're not just toys for the pleasure of men.
One of the benefactors suggested that they get a half a kilo of cocaine and pour it over the girls and violate them. This is a donor, and they use the word here, benefactor. I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
We talk about what is benefaction. You know, I am at the point where I just don't believe that there's probably any institution left where we don't see this kind of deep-seated abuse. It's in the government, it's in the corporate, it's in the media, it's in the entertainment, it's in... I mean, it just seems to be where we go. You know, I'm really upset that growing up thing where you want to be a ballerina. I had a daughter who wanted to be a ballerina. You know, she went to ballet school and she got good at it, but she actually outgrew ballerina size. You know, but could you imagine that she aspires to this all her life and goes through all this school and training and pain, and then she gets there and she has to survive in an institution where she has to make a living while being abused? You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to grow up and be a fireman. You know, I wanted to go and put out fires. And when I became an adult and I didn't become a fireman, I learned of the plight of black people who had become firemen at that time. And the insidious indoctrination that they had to be put through, the racism that was in fire departments. And women who became fire women at that time, and the sexism that was in fire departments. And I was so disappointed. I said, if I would have grown up and then if I would have really gotten to be a fireman, this is what I would have had to go through to put out a fire? You know, there's so many instances where my dreams and expectations in America have been thwarted by these kinds of recognitions that our institutions are sexist and our institutions are racist and our institutions are, you know, abusive.
That these dreams are just all laden with reality. They are not the idealized version that exists in the imagination of children. And what if they were? That sounds wonderful. But,
Yeah.
I mean, it almost seems inherent in moneyed and powered and even patriarchal institutions of this type, that the more money and the power and influence that you have, the easier it is to just push things under the rug, to be able to use your power to exploit those who don't have it.
Well, why does power go to exploitation? I mean, we see it over and over again. It's hard to deny.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not we're talking about the movie industry, or whether or not we're talking about the media boardroom. You know, why does power lead to exploitation? It seems that power should allow you to be comfortable in your own skin and less abusive of people.
I guess.
I mean, it just seems that way. I wouldn't know, obviously.
I mean, I suppose look at the path that many have to take to get to power at this point. That it's got to be combative, that it's got to be competitive, that it's got to be cutthroat. And I don't think you lose those qualities once you gain power.
But why does it have to abuse people? I mean, there was a couple of reports where we saw that women go in certain businesses where they were in corporate control, that they were abusing men in certain ways that were similar. You know, why does power lead to abuse? Is that our nature? Or
Of
is
course,
that,
the old maxim, power corrupts and true power corrupts completely, or absolutely, or absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's an old maxim, and I don't think it's without truth, but why?
why? And why does it go that way? Why do we have to humiliate and dismantle the egos of others? I'm only asking, but I don't know.
Because there is, and there are many mentors and teachers who aren't like that.
Yeah.
There are many who can actually strive to, support their students and actually lift them up. And they're not so jealous of their own power and position that they seek to defend it at any cost, which I think is part of it for some people, that they're just insecure in their position and they think they have to defend it at any cost.
And they're showing off to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
This is my power. I'm so strong. I'm so powerful. Okay.
Yep.
So, okay.
I do want to touch on Elizabeth Warren's Accountable Capitalism Act. And she's here to save capitalism. Bill, aren't you glad?
No.
The Accountable Capitalism Act, what she says, it's corporations that claim the legal rights of personhood should be legally required to accept the moral obligations of personhood. Sure. That sounds nice. But should we have corporations at all, is, I suppose, the more salient question.
They claim the legal rights of personhood should be legally required. You see, first of all, I mean, I can't accept that.
You can't accept that.
I can't accept that a corporation is a person.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's no way, two ways. I even heard somebody talk about this the other day where they were talking about there is a corporate spirit, there is a corporate consciousness and all that. Yeah, I agree. There is a corporate spirit. There is a corporate consciousness. There is a corporate culture. But none of that equals it being a person. None of that equals it being you or me. It just means that there is a consciousness wherever there is a group aggregate. There is a consciousness, a cultural consciousness, or wherever there's in any church or in any Boy Scout or whatever it is, sure. But that doesn't make it a person. It just makes it a cultural conscience or a cultural corporate culture.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing as a person. A person is born as a citizen with inalienable rights. A corporation is incorporated by citizens with the authority to say that it will serve some public good or not.
Well, that seems to be, and no, I think this is a smokescreen. I think this is a diversion. I think this is just her, go-to for trying to get the Democratic nomination in 2020. But it appears that she is trying to get it back to that idea of the commons and the common good, at least in name.
I don't think so.
Any corporation with revenue over $1 billion would need a federal charter of corporate citizenship.
So what? Who is going to approve of the charter? Other people with $1 billion?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Is it going to be you and me that decides that?
Well,
if
no.
it's you and me, it's a commons. You understand what I'm saying? If it comes to us and we all have to collectively make this decision, then it's a commons. Mm-hmm. But as long as the authority is going to arrest and those people who have that power as they are selected to have that power, we're talking about the same people we're talking about today. They just have another thing that they can make a decision about. But it doesn't affect the rest of us. I'm sorry. As far as I'm concerned, she comes into office with the image of being opposed to capitalism and Wall Street and all that other kind of thing. And she comes into an office where she goes out and raises a lot of funds so that she can run again. And who does she raise it from?
But look at what she's done. Look at her decisions. Look at her silence. I think her silence is the most instrumental thing to look at. because her silence speaks volumes. She was silent when Bernie came to bear. She was silent or supported the increase in arms sales. She was silent when the pharmaceutical manufacturers sought to limit import of prescription drugs from Canada. When all these things that would have truly benefited the common people of America came to pass, she was silent.
Yeah. This is a front. You know, this is what you put out there for the people to digest while you go and you raise corporate money. You know, you could put this before the corporate, and the corporate will look at this and say, "Oh, okay, yeah, fine." You know, the corporation is not threatened by any of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, oh, we get the chance to decide who has a federal charter. Oh, okay, fine. You know, require stock awards to executives to be held for 5 years before cashing out. Yeah, like wow. I mean, that's a big difference, huh? 40% of corporate boards should be made up of workers. Now there's something that's interesting.
No, I appreciate that. It's a good start.
But of course, it's a proposal that will never happen.
We'll start at 40 and we'll be reduced to 10.
And then we'll see who gets on there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll see what the qualifications are of those workers who get on there,
Mm-hmm.
and which one of those who get on there who say they have something to say or that is not within the corporate way of thinking, like saying, "Oh, we shouldn't make widgets anymore because widgets, you know, destroy such and such."
But also, who gets to choose? Do the workers themselves get to choose,
No.
or is it the board of directors who gets
Board
to
of
choose?
directors, that's what I'm
So,
gonna qualify.
guess who's going to get picked?
Right, those who kiss, you know what? You know, the idea is to shift back to the common good and away from shareholder profit, and this doesn't do that.
Mm.
You know, it's a good idea to do that, but this doesn't do it. None of this does that. You know, I think she's a sham. You know, I think she shammed her way into office, and when she got there, her true colors came out. You know,
It's a shame.
yeah, it is.
It really is a shame.
Yeah, it is. You know,
But no, I just read about that today, and at first I'm like, huh, yeah, maybe there's something to it. But knowing her background, I had a little bit of pause.
I was so
And
disappointed
understandably
in
so.
her, and I still am. You know, I thought we had a champion there until she got in office.
Yeah, not quite.
And when she was, oh man, so full of the establishment during Hillary's time, oh my goodness, I couldn't stand her. She was so establishment. Oh my God.
She was like Hillary was a Goldwater girl. Warren was a Clinton girl.
Yeah. And you know something? Nobody in office means anything to me as long as they continue to vote for war. Nothing else that they say matters. As long as they continue to throw away our people, our kids, our women, our wealth down the rat hole of war. And when they have all these authorization bills and opportunities to stand up to the deep, dark states and say, hey, ain't going to study war no more, they fail that test. And all of our congressmen, you know, I can think of just maybe a couple of congressmen who are anti-war. And I can think of one state governor and a couple of state senators. I can think of one city councilwoman in Seattle and maybe one potential one in Brooklyn. You know, ain't going to study war no more should be the mantra. But it's not going to happen, and we're going to continue with $716 billion being spent on death and destruction and our bridges falling down, our kids in need.
Mm-hmm.
And we continue on this path. And they're the ones who allow us to continue on this path. And they lie to us. I got a lot of stuff down here about people lying. You know, they lie to us about the path that we're on.
So, Who else is lying to us?
Who else?
No one. Okay,
Right.
we're just enmeshed in truth. Perfect. I knew it.
You know, one of the biggest liars is Nikki Haley. You know what Colin Powell had to be tricked into, she does as a matter of course.
Did he have to be tricked into it, though?
So the story goes.
Sure. Okay. All right.
You know, but we certainly know that she can't tell that story. You know, I heard her again this morning, you know, telling us that we're going to bomb the people in Syria if they touch the people who are the terrorists, but who are the rebels, excuse me, in Idlib. In other words, we're going to bomb the Syrians for defending their country against terrorists. Or even if you call them rebels, you're trying to put the government out of existence. We don't abide by rebels in this country.
And guess who those bombs are going to hit? Those children,
Of course.
who we say we care so much about.
And children is the lie that she told. She sat there in front of the United Nations, and she described the children in Idlib. And she said that she was desperate, that we should save those children. And we should save them from chemical attacks, and we should save them from onslaught. And this woman who is the ambassador from Britain, UK, she too. I can't think of her name. But I watched these two people who support Israel, who had nothing to say about a 16-year-old kid being shot this weekend with an exploding bullet. And why would a soldier, sniper, shoot a 16-year-old with a bullet that explodes in his body, and that not be considered a war crime? I have no idea. But I did not hear her speak up for that Palestinian child. Mm-mm. And I did not hear her speak up for the children of Yemen, whom we support their death and destruction from the air and ground by Saudi troops and by even those Al-Qaeda forces.
Oh, absolutely.
That we have in Yemen. She don't care about Yemeni kids. She don't care about Venezuelan kids, where they're trying to destroy the economy.
She doesn't care about American kids.
She doesn't care about American kids. And it is destroy the economy, destroy the kids. That is the purpose of those kinds of sanctions. Nixon told us that straight out.
That's much like Madeleine Albright. When we were speaking of 500,000 potential deaths by hunger in Iraq, many of who were children. She said, well, we measured the benefits and detriments, and we found, and I thought that it was worth it to topple one regime, to kill 500,000 people, that was worth it.
She said that she was against their use of chlorine gas. Now, I don't think that people should use chemical weapons. If you had to use chemical weapons, chlorine gas is not a very good choice. It dissipates, and you saw the so-called chemical attack, how they washed off people's faces and nobody died from the chlorine. But anyway,
it would be a bad way to go, though.
Look, the United States knowingly used white phosphorus this weekend. It's banned. Used white phosphorus in Fallujah. Used depleted uranium in Fallujah. And she says nothing about the use of chemical weapons. She lies when she says that she is concerned about the children of Idlib.
Of course.
The New York Times lied. The New York Times said that we don't publish opinions of people who identity we don't identify. You know why they said this? Because they had received some columns that were written by inmates with respect to the prison strike.
And then that makes you think, what stake does the New York Times have in silencing a prison strike?
What stake do they have in recognizing the status quo of prison labor and the prison system that we have set up here now, and not rocking the boat? and being a part of that whole establishment use of people?
Well, that's it then.
Oh, I mean, they're just a part of the establishment. They just happen to be the media arm. You know?
And no, I shudder when I hear people praising the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN, mostly liberals, as some sort of bastions of journalism and integrity.
The New York Times is the paper of record.
And I would just like to take a moment now to really encourage people to read, since we're around 9/11, an article by Seymour Hersh about the capture of Osama bin Laden. And Seymour Hersh, of course, from the 70s and the Vietnam era, just great journalist. But he wrote recently a really detailed article, I believe it was published in Great Britain, about the actual circumstances of the capture of Osama bin Laden. So I really do recommend that people check that out. If you're looking for actual journalism.
If you're looking for real, yeah. And investigative journalism at that.
Yeah.
When we have the New York Times saying that they don't publish opinions from people who are not identified, and then they turn around and publish an opinion of a person who is identified as being an anonymous source within the Trump administration, you know, that just simply says that, you know, we have adults in the room, for example, you know.
They've sure stayed quiet then, haven't they? They haven't spoken out about anything.
Well, the thing is, what they said, what this person said, anonymous, who they published anonymously, what he said was that there are adults in the room, and we even steal papers from the president's desk so that he can't do things that he wants to do impulsively. And then they what's his name, Woodard, you know, he publishes that Kelly says that the president has a fifth grade mentality because he talks about pulling troops out of South Korea. Now here I'm sitting like, who are these adults in the room? The people who think that we're supposed to stay in South Korea, they're the adults.
Forever.
You know? Those people who think that we should bomb North Korea or continue to threaten North Korea or to continue to put a noose around China, these are the adults in the room. Those people who think that we should stay in Syria forever, those people who say, when he says, I want to make peace with Russia, those people who say you will not make peace with Russia, these are the adults in the room? If the adults in the room are those people who are giving us the policies that we are living, not to mention the cost of drugs, the cost of health care, et cetera, in this country, if those are the adults who accept the status quo and they fight against an infantile 5-year-old who wants to work for peace, then God help us.
And you see very clearly how implanting that idea of what a mature adult viewpoint should be is meant to influence people's perspectives.
Yeah.
It's just it's a very easy, very low effort, probably very successful way in instilling what should be considered a mature viewpoint. It's genius, to be honest. Genius. It's really smart.
They are smart. They are smart. You know, Woodward, who was an investigative reporter like Seymour Hersh. He was an investigative reporter when he did Watergate, and when they were doing Watergate, the thing that kept coming up again and again and again was you got to get evidence. You got to get evidence that backs up the evidence.
I mean, yeah.
You know,
is that pretty obvious?
Well, no, because now he publishes a book that is a gossip book. You know, he interviews these people who tell him things about the president in the form of gossip, and he publishes it as a work of journalism. And what I'm saying is that he's lying to us because that is not journalism. Journalism begins where he left off.
Much like the scientific method.
Much less like the scientific method. Yes,
you don't start with well, I guess you start with a theory, but you don't shape the facts to prove what you want. You take empirical evidence and find out what it says. Anyway.
Obama. I had a long written thing from his speech, but I don't have it with me here.
Oh, since he started to speak out on the campaign trail
Oh
again.
yeah, he said that the United States, we, especially our uniformed persons who made these sacrifices, our diplomats, and our Peace Corps volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
He said that we brought to the world this order. We brought to the world the notion of law. We brought to the world the order of law. We brought to the world the idea of democracy. His administration was a part and parcel of bringing to the world an inability to not give credence to democracy. That's what he did.
Oh, that's what he did.
That's what he did.
Oh, I thought he just drone struck
And that's
everyone.
what we did. Yeah, well, he didn't say anything about that. You know,
Oh,
he didn't say anything about bombing 7 countries, about putting Libya out of existence.
We must have been dropping flags on them and not bombs. We're
Yeah.
food and not bombs.
Yeah, you know, and
Except we weren't.
I'm not going into it in a long way or not whatnot, but they're trying to give him credit for environment, because the reason that they can do that is because, you know, Trump is so bad on the environment that he was a modicum better, you know, but they don't remember why the Paris Peace Accords became weak and unenforceable. It was because of Obama and because of the so-called lack of leadership, the leadership that the Americans provided. We diluted every accords, 2 conferences while he was president of the United States, where we didn't cooperate with the world on climate change. And he was the reason why. And then late in his administration, he did a couple of nice things talking about the Clean Air Act, and we're supposed to give him credit for that. He took down the solar panels off the White House that were brought there to recognize or have recognition in America that we should move to renewables.
Hmm.
You know, I'm sorry, but Obama is a liar. He did not bring democracy and a rule of law to the world. He brought the forgiveness of torturers. Remember his comment? We're not going to prosecute these people. You know, we're going to look forward. And guess what happened looking forward? You want to talk about rule of law to the world? The major rule of law to the world, I think, is expressed in the ICC, the International Criminal Court. The United States never joined the ICC.
No.
The ICC is being challenged to investigate war crimes committed by the United States and by Israel. And the Israelis are being challenged by the Palestinians, who say that they are the victims of Israeli war crimes. And John Bolton made certain that the world understands that they will sanction anybody in the ICC personally, that if they appear in the United States, we will find reason to prosecute them, and we will sanction and prosecute anybody who assists, any country or state or person who assists the International Criminal Court in investigating war crimes committed by the United States. So much for our commitment to the rule of law.
If you're not with us, you're against us.
And we don't have to recognize law. If we decide that we're going to stay in Syria, we're going to stay in Syria, uninvited and because we want to. If we decide we're going to bomb your country, we're going to bomb your country, whether we get a UN approval or not. We are a law unto ourselves, and we don't recognize anybody in the world, body of whatever, you know, having any kind of jurisdiction, say-so, or influence over ourselves or our decisions. And that's our stance. We are the top of the hill, the king of the hill, and we stand truly alone in our imperialistic power. And we will punish you if you question us. And we have made that statement to the world, to John Bolton just yesterday. You know, Obama says that we brought law, the rule of law to the world, and John Bolton said, no, we did not. We don't have to recognize the rule of law. You know. Someone came on and said that North Korea is attempting to crush our First Amendment rights. It's North Korea that's doing this.
Oh,
it's
just
not.
like it was Al Qaeda who made us what we were.
You know, you have Facebook right now who suspended Syria's account. You know, because Syria might have something to say about Idlib that's different from what Nikki Haley or the deep state might have to say about it. You know, I don't know. I guess Syria doesn't have any First Amendment rights to express itself about what's happening in its country. But we're taking down the opinions of anybody who agrees with them. We're taking down the Haiti analysis. We're taking down the Venezuela analysis. You know, we're taking down people whose freedom of speech allows them to criticize the narrative that is the accepted narrative. And we're accusing North Korea of crushing our First Amendment rights. When you get to a point that your Facebook and your Google have to sit down in front of a government committee in order to decide what process they will use to distribute news and to make judgments over what is and what is not the news that the people should hear. Mm-hmm. You are at that point where we used to talk about Russia and Pravda and state-controlled. We are there. We have crushed our First Amendment, and the fault there, Brutus, is in ourselves, not in